I make an alcohol-burning beverage can stove without using the proper tools, such as a blade or a measuring tape. But this series is not really about how to make a camping stove. That some of my experiences, skills, and knowledge are useful to survivalists and preppers. When I look at an item, instead of asking, what is this designed to do? I ask myself, what can it do? Instead of looking at this and seeing an Acme extraction tool, I see a point, I see a straight edge. You may have noticed that I'm having difficulty handling things. Do you see that my hand is shaking? Always keep your workspace clean. Wear protective gear. I can measure from one hole to the next hole and do know that it's 1/16 of the circumference. This is my measuring stick. We need to make jet holes in the can so that the vaporized alcohol can escape from the can. If we had any tool we wanted, what tool would we use? From what I have seen on the internet, people use an actual drill bit with an electric drill or sometimes a hand drill. I assume that's good, but I only started making these stoves after I became homeless, so I've never used a drill bit. I've always used some other type of tool, mostly because of coincidence and happenstance. I ended up using a very large sewing needle most of the time, probably about 6 centimeters long. But I don't have any sewing needles right now. If I were allowing myself to use my Gerber Bear Grylls multi-tool, then I might use this knife because the point is very sharp. But using it for this purpose would dull the point, and I don't think I would want to deal with having to sharpen it just for that. I'm not sure, but it doesn't matter because I'm not using the multi-tool. These are the 3 items that I am allowing myself to use. I've never used any of these items to make the jet holes, so I'm not sure which one will work the best. So let me tell you what I think the advantages and disadvantages of each of the tools are. I like this one because it's so much larger than the other ones, and it would be very easy to grip and to manipulate. Overlooked. This Acme extractor has its own subplot in this video series. I promise you. But the tip is not very sharp, and the tip widens very quickly. If I wanted to make a large hole, then I wouldn't care that the tip widened so quickly. This safety pin looks like a good tool. It's not nearly as easy to hold as the other tool, but the tip is much sharper, and the maximum width of the safety pin is the width of the hole that I would like. So while I'm puncturing the can, if I accidentally push it all the way down to here, that's okay. This other tool, or if I puncture and push the tool in just a little bit too far, I get a much wider hole. The safety pin is superior in many ways to the other tool, but the safety pin was designed to be flexible. Watch as it bends. Well, this flexibility could be very annoying when I'm trying to use this to drive a hole. The third option is a hypodermic needle. It's 27 gauge, which is pretty small, and the metal portion is only 13 millimeters long. But this is much sharper than the other two. And because it's so much sharper, it should be really easy to pierce the side of the can. This part here is way too thick and strong. I don't think it could pierce that, but the side of the can is thinner, and I think the sharpness of this needle will be a huge advantage. Because this metal portion is only 13 millimeters long, which is much shorter than the safety pin, that's less opportunity for the needle to bend when I'm pushing it. So I think that will be an advantage. And this plastic part is nice and sturdy, which will make it easier to hold, but it is very small. When I was 25 years old and not 45 years old, the size of this needle would not be an issue. But trying to manipulate it when I'm older and I have shaky hands because of a health problem, it could become an issue. I wish there were a way to attach the needle to the cap, or I had a plunger, but I don't, so I'm just gonna have to hold the needle. Over the years, I have made stoves that had too few holes and too many. I've made stoves where the holes were too small, and I've made stoves where the holes were too big. It's very easy to add more holes or to increase the size of the jet holes. It's possible to do the reverse, and I've done it to an extent, but it's not fun. And because these are the options that I'm giving to myself, and I don't want to make the holes too big because it's easier to go back and enlarge them if I need to, I'm going to start with the hypodermic needle. And I think the only problem I'll have is manipulating this very small needle. Put the cap on the needle. Safety equipment, like caps for needles, is a type of protective gear, so use it. Plus, it keeps our workspace clean. I'm wearing the gloves because I want to have a stronger grip on the hypodermic needle. Previously, I told you that a useful skill and necessary habit is to unlearn many things you know about the world. When you look at things, ask, what can it do, rather than what is it designed to do? Look at things for only what they are, not for whatever meaning they have. In this case, your raw material is, in fact, an empty Monster Energy drink aluminum can. But now you have decided to make it the raw material for your stove. So you must stop seeing it as an empty Monster Energy drink aluminum can. Try to let go of all that information and then look at the object, look at the raw material for only what is there. For example, do you see here how these two parts don't quite line up? And if you can see it on the camera, when you look down the can, there's a line where on each side of the line, the paint is a slightly different color. What happens is they put all of this paint on the can in one sheet that starts and ends right here. The result of that is there is a very straight line that is perpendicular to the bottom of the can. So if I wanted to cut the can along this edge and I wanted it to be a straight line, instead of making a line, I would use this because it's already there and it's straighter than anything I could possibly ever make. Unlearning what you know about the world can be really difficult. If you look here and you're able to read what this says in abbreviated Spanish, it says net contents 473 milliliters, then your ability to read it, your ability to assign meaning and significance to those symbols could interfere with your ability to see what is really there. In this case, we have a slight advantage because we're working with the can upside down. So maybe the letters, numbers won't jump out at you and you won't see the written meaning and you can just see the lines. Because when we look at it upside down and we look at that same set of markings that previously we interpreted to mean net contents 473 milliliters, we can now see that there's a straight line. All of these markings form a straight line, you see? And that straight line extends around the can. The measuring stick we made is excellent for telling us how far along the circumference we want to go. It measures 1/16 of the circumference between two holes, but it does not tell us how far from the bottom of the can we want to be so that all the holes are at the same level. But right here on the can, there is a straight line for us to work with that goes all the way around. It starts here with these words and then it extends to these logos and then this barcode. And then over here, there's another straight line where these words are. The letters G and Y extend through that line, but we can still see the line. And then you see it goes all the way around. We need to make 16 evenly spaced jet holes. It's logical to start and put 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then just keep going until we get to 16. Problem is, we know that this measuring stick is not precise. So each time I make a jet hole, I'm not measuring perfectly 1/16 of the circumference. Plus, I'm human and I'm working with irregular tools, so I'm going to be off. So there will be errors. We know there will be be errors, but we can mitigate those errors. If I do 1 through 16 all in the same direction, then the errors are accumulating with each new hole. So by the time I get to the 16th hole, I've already accumulated 15 holes worth of errors. Instead, I'm going to put my first hole here, and then I'm going to do 8 holes in this direction. Then I'm going to come back here and go in the other direction and do 8 holes. So there will be an accumulation of errors, but the most that will get accumulated will be 8 holes on each side. That should help to mitigate the total error a little bit. I'm working on a slick surface, so I want something that will keep everything from sliding around. But at the same time, I'm trying to use tools that are not necessarily standard tools. So instead of pulling out a towel or something like that, I have a cloth face mask here. And this was actually made by a friend of mine. Thank you, Ned, for making this for me. How high do we want the jet holes to be? Because this is a side burner, the stove and the pot will be arranged like this. Therefore, the jet holes need to be low enough that when the alcohol comes out, there's enough space for the oxygen and alcohol to mix and burn. If I put the holes way up on the silver part, there wouldn't be enough space for the oxygen to get in there and for there to be combustion. On the other hand, if I put the holes too low, then the flames will combust too far away from the pot, and that will be inefficient. It won't heat the pot. So the two main factors are we don't want it too high because that will inhibit the combustion, and we don't want it too low because then the flames will be too far away from the pot. There's a third factor that would be easier to explain if I could show you the actual stove, but what happens is when the gas evaporates, it rises, and if there's a lot of space in the stove above the jet holes, then there's a bunch of gas up there, vaporized alcohol, that is not being consumed. So that's not efficient. So that factor suggests we want the jet holes as high as possible. When I add it all up, this line that we identified earlier as circumscribing the can is just about the right height. So that's where I'm going to put the jet holes. I feel compelled to remind you that this is not the most efficient stove design available. There are other really cool designs, but they would be very difficult to make with the tools that I am limiting myself to. And in general, you need a pot stand to make any of the most efficient stoves, and I don't have a pot stand. I don't even have a makeshift pot stand. I need 31 days of rent support. Let's end my homelessness, cure my disability, and return me to self-sufficiency. Be pro-social. Join Patreon. Become a member of my YouTube channel.